better poised to be a champion of green hydrogen and to be the least cost producer of green hydrogen and to be an exporter of ammonia, that is green hydrogen in its liquid form, than India. No other country in the world is more climatically blessed than India to be a champion, and no other country has better entrepreneurship in the field of green hydrogen than India has. And therefore, while India today imports about almost 200 billion worth of energy, all fossil fuel, it is possible for India to be an exporter of energy by 2047. Today, it's important that even if we do all our electricity through renewable energy, electricity is only 20% of energy. The balance 80% of energy is all hard to abate sectors. Refineries, steel, cement, fertilizer, long distance transport. This 80% of the energy cannot be through electricity. It requires green hydrogen. And therefore, many people will tell you, go for grey hydrogen, go for blue hydrogen. The world will tell us. They will, first of all, India should focus on only one thing, one and only one thing, and that is green hydrogen. Because we are climatically blessed, it's possible for us to be the least cost producer. Today, the cost of green hydrogen is $4.50 per kilogram. The challenge for India is to bring it down to $1 per kilogram by 2030 and become the biggest exporter of ammonia. The second key issue is, to my mind, that this whole movement has to be driven by, I'm absolutely clear, which is now being driven, and I want to compliment Mr. Hardeep Puri and his team, that the oil companies are driving it because refineries have to take the lead. India today uses 11 to 12% of the grey hydrogen consumed in the world through our refineries. And if this 12% is converted from grey to green, we will become a very big producer of green hydrogen. And therefore, I really want to compliment Mr. Puri that he's driving the refineries to refinery. Second, private sector has to be the driver of green hydrogens across steel, across cement, across long distance. So private sector has to be the driver. Secondly, size and scale has to drive down the cost from $4.50 to $1. Size and scale of India is important. Much like we've used technology to do massive technology, pole vaulting and mobile telephony, we have to do the same in green hydrogen. And thirdly, I think let us not look at it as only as a producer for India, but as an exporter. So India can be a very major exporter. And for that all to happen, I think it's important that we move away because my view is that the government has done its bit. Government has announced a 20,000 green hydrogen plant, 20,000 crore. It has done its bit. Now it is important for us to roll out schemes on ground quickly, announce winners of these schemes, number one. Number two, it is time for us to build green hydrogen and ammonia plants in India, and we should move from plans to action. We should move really from PowerPoint presentations to investments on ground. It's important to do this. It's also important that we do lighthouse projects, about 100 megawatt plus should be built to build confidence, and much of that is being cracked by the refineries, as I said, so I really compliment them. Fourthly, I think, to my mind, our Indian technology is critical to achieve Atmanirbhar Bharat, and therefore we should announce a grand challenge to Indian industry to achieve several things indigenously. I think we should go for a grand challenge and challenge the Indian industry. All these big players who want to get into green hydrogen, we should challenge them to produce the world's largest electrolyzer stack of 10 megawatt. We should challenge the Indian industry to produce the world's most efficient electrolyzer at megawatt scale. We should challenge the Indian industry to produce the most affordable hydrogen transport carrier, all liquid organic hydrogen carrier, and we should challenge the Indian industry to produce the world's most rugged fuel cells. And all this should come out of the green hydrogen mission through grand challenges, all grand challenges. And if we succeed in this, you will see that Indian industry will become the biggest success story. Also, it is time to really...
We could actually announce a green or a national green hydrogen mission for India. And along with that, a budget of around $2.4 billion was also earmarked, which reflects our resolve to address the challenges of decarbonization and to achieve the targets of net zero by 2070 as has been reiterated by India and also by Prime Minister in various international fora from time to time. I am glad that Professor Sood could get under the same roof stakeholders from various areas, and Mr. Vineet Mittal sitting there is also represents the other end of the spectrum and our reflection of the integrated approach. We have experts, we have innovators, we have industry leaders, we have private sector, and even though Professor Sood very rightly mentioned that government has to take an initiating role in a venture like this, but I am totally convinced that without private sector we would not be able to move on, and to that extent it gives me a special satisfaction also to see that very recently the PSA's office we have been able to float what is known as a Strategic Hydrogen Innovation Partnership, the SHIP. And in fact, I have been a very strong protagonist of this private involvement, and has also sought to put across in my own way the idea of PPP plus PPP. So we have public-private participation domestically, engaging with public-private participation internationally, so that we could have the extended integration and combine all the resources put together, private and public within India, private and public outside India, and that could become a norm for future endeavors as well. I don't think I need to talk much about green hydrogen because I believe this is the valedictory session, and I'm sure you must have consumed enough of hydrogen over the last 2.5 days and now waiting for consuming some better stuff over the lunch. But nevertheless, this is a global concern, and also it gives, I think the impression has gone out that under Prime Minister Modi in the last 8-9 years, India is no longer seen as a country oblivious of the global concerns. Earlier on, when you went for an international conference or a fora, they didn't expect much from India as far as these climate concerns were concerned, as far as clean energy concerns were concerned. They thought maybe India was beset with its own set of problems, food scarcity, droughts, floods, etc., etc. We remain occupied. So it has actually given India a much wider global presence and a global existence and a global role.
Completed 2 years in the Petroleum and Natural Gas Ministry today, and I am beginning to understand what is happening. So anyone who realizes that we are dependent 85% for our crude oil imports, crude oil requirements on imports, knows how serious this green hydrogen issue is. And I don't know what the figures are, $200 billion of imports, etc. That depends on the international price of crude at any given point of time. But even if you go in the other direction, if you look at the gas requirements, they're also 50-55% we are in. But something that we don't understand too often is that ours is not a figure which is at 85%. Our domestic consumption is shooting up. Global increase in energy consumption is, I think, global growth is 1%. Our growth is 3%, 3 times the global average. Now, what do? Out of the 100 million barrels of crude oil that is consumed every day, we are currently consuming, India alone, 5 million barrels of crude. This is likely to go up to 6.5, 7 million barrels per day. Where is it going to come from? If it's going to come from imports, then, well, we are trying to ensure that our E&P goes up, etc., etc. But that's, make no mistake, fossil fuel world is a fast changing and ultimately declining thing, because your environmental concerns will consume that. So, which is the wave of the future? It is green energy. And now let me come back to a second point. I personally don't think that the government alone or the government mainly can do this. I think the emphasis which has been put on the private sector by the previous speakers is totally correct. Why do I say this? First and foremost, even when it comes to traditional energy, government is only in a position at best to provide an enabling ecosystem. Government doesn't get into the job of extracting oil or minerals, etc. You provide a system, then the OMCs take over or the private sector takes over. But why will green hydrogen succeed in India? And I say this with a great deal of confidence, a point which I think could have been elaborated further, but I think the previous speakers wanted me to also have some space left where I could say something original. I think the reason green hydrogen will succeed in India is for a very simple reason. A, you have a lot of demand for energy. Number two, I'm not a student of science, and I totally agree with that as a starting point. There was a time after the Honorable Prime Minister's announcement from the ramparts of the Red Fort, when he was addressing the nation, when he said that we will take up green hydrogen in mission mode. There was a time, many months after that, when I had my friends in the private sector, in the startups, in the ONCs, all coming and whining and saying ki PM Saab ne bol diya, kuch ho nahi raha hai. Now, some of these guys are professional whiners, but they're my friends, they also get things done. So I ignore the fact that they occasionally whine also. But they were right. But I think two decisions which were taken after that confirmed that what we are doing in green hydrogen in the country, and I'm not saying just now, but when these decisions were taken, were a clear demonstration of the fact that the government meant business, that the government realized what are the actions that needed to be taken, and the government's actions as displayed, one, in that I think it was a cabinet decision on 20,000 crores for assistance to manufacture electrolyzers. Dr. Jitendra Singh said $2.4 billion, I got a bit worried. There's another $2.4 billion which had gone. But it's the same 20,000 crores. And a cabinet decision which clearly showed that government was acutely conscious of the fact that the green hydrogen development would need a broader than one-point control. So I think 6 ministries were highlighted. So today if you talk about electricity, yes, whether electricity accounts for 17 or 20%, that's only 20%. But then there are others out there, steel, etc., and our refineries. So I think those 2 cabinet decisions made it clear that government was serious and has actually put in place an ecosystem for the development of green hydrogen. And when Dr. Jitendra Singh, the Principal Scientific Advisor, Amitabh say that India, green hydrogen, the world map, it's a serious proposition. But I want to go a step further than this. Anyone who has even a nodding acquaintance with our energy requirements, the system that we have built up,